still have vague memories of the day in second grade when my mom visited me for lunch at Bailey Park Elementary School. We were sitting against the wall after finishing our macaroni and cheese when she asked what I would be doing at recess. I said, like usual, keeping score of the pickup basketball game. You see, I was the smallest kid in my class until 11th grade, and yes, I know that's really hard to believe now, but it's true. She told me I should try playing. I did, and I've been fascinated by sports ever since. I became, I suppose you would call, a sports nerd. I rarely miss watching a Hawkeye basketball or football game on television. The NCAA tournament, FIFA World Cup were, and I guess still are, like Christmas to me. And as I'll get to later, I really love Christmas. I remember browsing the web endlessly, studiously keeping track of every single Iowa high school football and basketball team schedule and conference standings for whatever reason. When the postseason pairings were released each year, I'd make my own brackets by hand and write in the winners throughout the entire tournaments. I tried to know it all, and I could still tell you every Iowa high school's mascot and conference affiliation if you really wanted to know. I suppose that's why I became interested in sports journalism. I wanted to know the answers I couldn't see. Why do coaches make certain decisions? How do players adjust in the face of adversity? But the truth is, no one knows it all, and that's what makes sports fun. It's what makes sports journalism the most fun and can be strenuous profession. Constantly pursuing those answers, though impossible to find them all, makes me a better writer, a better reporter. My faith has been handed down to me, and that my great-great-grandmother brought her Lutheranism to the United States from Norway. I attended St. John's Lutheran growing up, often not too fond of sitting in the pew for an hour, listening to things I wasn't quite sure what to make of. But I remained faithful, you could say. I attended church nearly every day that my parents did, other than the days I could barely crawl out of bed from cross-country practices. It started to become something I enjoyed too, something that made me feel good. I paid attention to the sermons as much as I could and tried to take away something from each service. Yet when I would talk with other friends who were Christians and they would bring up biblical stories or lessons that applied to their everyday lives, I often felt left out. Either I hadn't even heard of the story, or I simply couldn't process what lessons were to be taken from them as well as they seemed to. It didn't seem right to me that I fell so far behind. It was, and still is, immensely frustrating to me. But without faith, what are we left to pursue? Like I said, the fun in sports comes from not knowing it all. I think it's the same with faith. You may recall me earlier mentioning my affection for the Christmas season. I get goosebumps thinking about it. The giving season, cookies, hot chocolate, music, movies, and of course those childhood memories of running down the stairs to see what Santa brought. It's absolutely my favorite time of the year. And my favorite Christmas movie by far is The Polar Express. I've watched it so many times that I've begun to draw some connections to my faith. The boy in the movie is polarized by the North Pole and Santa Claus. Does it all exist, or is it all a fake? You can sense his frustration when on Christmas Eve he flings open an encyclopedia to the page on the North Pole, which reads that it's barren and devoid of life. He goes back to bed before being awakened by the magical train. One of the central themes for the movie is that seeing is believing. But for the millions of us who weren't fortunate enough to board the Polar Express, how do we believe? Shortly after describing a Christmas Eve in which he should have fallen off the train, but was mysteriously pulled back on board, the conductor tells the questioning boy, seeing is believing, but sometimes the most real things in the world are the things we can't see. I've held now for quite a while that movie is a terrific example of Christianity. It can feel impossible to know why we're here, what God's plan is for us, how we should worship, what biblical stories mean, which biblical stories we should know. But what we do know is that, as Martin Luther said, we're saved by faith and grace alone. And what the boy comes to find out is that Santa is real. So as long as you believe. Everyone his age ends up not being able to hear the sound of Santa's sleigh bell he received from St. Nick as the first gift of Christmas. But it still rings for him as he narrates at the end. He still has faith throughout his entire life. Faith in the book of Hebrews is Abel offering God a more excellent sacrifice than Cain. It's Noah building an ark, even though there was no natural sign of impending flood. to Abraham leaving his home. These are all extreme examples. What does faith mean for the rest of us? For me, it's believing that the Chicago Cubs will win a World Series during my lifetime. But really, it is a difficult question for me, and I'm sure many of you as well. A few months ago, I was driving to work, and I received a text message that I thought at the time was really important to read. And I suppose that now thinking back, and I can't even remember who sent that message, it just furthers the claim that no text is more important than a life. But foolishly, I picked up the phone and unlocked it, only for it to fall out of my hands and onto the floor at the passenger side of my car, completely out of reach. It ended up being the thing I was thinking about for most of the rest of the drive. What had just happened? Had God sent the phone out of my hand, knowing the potential consequences of reading that text behind the wheel, and trying to show me that I shouldn't ever do that again, no matter who the text was from? Had my faithfulness or an earlier prayer convinced God to help me? Or was it just a coincidence that coincidentally got me thinking about the lack of safety of texting and driving? It's impossible to answer, but I'll turn to Hebrews 11:6. Without faith, it is impossible to please Him. For he who comes to God must believe that He is, and that He is a rewarder of those who seek Him. So faith means asking those questions, even though you know there often won't be an answer. Because like sports journalism, by pursuing what you don't know and what you may never know, it becomes more fascinating to you. In college, I was extremely excited to take literature of the Old and New Testament because, like I said, I didn't feel like I knew the Bible a whole lot coming into college. But like a lot of my fellow students, in time I fell behind on the readings and did not get out of the class as much as I should have. I took Chinese religions with Uni Terasawa, one of the best classes I've taken at Wartburg. Learning about another religion had sparked something inside of me to learn more about my own. To return to faith despite not fully understanding why. I took Lutheran Heritage and History of Christianity, even though I didn't need the religion credits, and began to understand more about my own religion and denomination, and how things came to be, how this chapel and how a Lutheran service came to be how it is today. This was immensely beneficial for me, and I now have an idea of what I want my faith to be. Going back to Hebrews 11, faith is confidence in what we hope for and assurance about what we do not see. So don't be afraid to question. So often we miss out on such a tremendous opportunity of being on a college campus where a lot of different people are questioning their faith. There's so many people on this campus thinking the same things that I'm thinking about and was thinking about, but are, like me, have been too afraid to admit it and don't want to talk about it. But faith is what keeps us going. It's the goal that's always there, but always out of reach. We should be open to those conversations, because this is one of the best times and places we have to do that. That goes for students, faculty, and staff. Do not be dissuaded by what you don't know, like I often was, and even what you think others know. It's okay to not grasp even some of the more traditional biblical stories. Accept that your faith doesn't always mean assurance, but be confident in it. And know that the most real things in life, or afterlife on earth, are the things you can't see.